Happy Thursday. And I am late. My bad, y'all. Forgive me. That's my fault. I beg for your forgiveness. I'm sorry about that. We had like a 2-hour meeting at work today. 2 hours. I was like, what in the world is happening? But, you know, it be like that in secular world sometimes. Secular work, it be like that. It be like that sometimes in a lot of different work. So, it's just one of those days, guys. So, my bad. Please forgive me. Happy Thursday. Say what's up in the chat as you come in. And we about to jump right in to these reactions, y'all. Got a couple clips. We got a couple Congress people in trouble today. There are a couple, but we're only going to really be talking about one today on the Democrat side. So, say what's up in the chat as you come in, guys. I am going to go down the menu as per usual. It is March 27th, 2025 on a Thursday. Happy Thursday, everybody. Say what's up in the chat as you come in. Say where you're watching from. And do me a favor, hit that like button for me. It's cheap because it's free. It's cheap. All you gotta do is hit it for me. Don't be petty, guys. Let's not be petty. So, let's run down the menu. Shout out to 13WMAZ. They have 149,000 subscribers. And they covered senators and legislators pushing for investigation on Signal chat released by The Atlantic. So this is in reference to the reporter who was added to a chat that was going on in Signal between some cabinet members. And this reporter worked for The Atlantic. They were not supposed to be added to the chat. And in the chat, they were talking about U.S. airstrikes towards the Houthis, which is a terrorist group in Yemen. And yeah, the reporter got to see some of the things they were talking about, and it wasn't a good thing. Now, the reporter did not leak anything early, but someone finally pointed it out. I reacted to this yesterday when we were on live stream, and this just that quick. I forgot who it was, but I believe it was a news anchor on Fox. But they did say that it was interesting that Jeffrey Goldberg didn't exit himself out of the chat, or he didn't just click out of the chat, but he proceeded to stay in the chat. I don't know for how many hours or a day, and actually not listen in, but I guess you could say read as to what was being said. So I thought that was interesting, and not a lot of people were talking about that. And then we're going to switch gears and jump over to Bill O'Reilly. Shout out to Bill. We like Bill on this channel. What a bunch of bull. Bill O'Reilly breaks down Senator Bernie Sanders. So Bill O'Reilly has known Bernie Sanders. I believe he said it was for 30 years. He's known him for some time now. Knows a lot about him. He's going to kind of break down where Bernie Sanders is coming from with these whole tours and crusades he's been going on with AOC, and what's behind some of the things that he's been trying to do to revive the Democratic Party, if you will. Then we're going to switch gears and go over to Live Now from Fox. Shout out to them. Jasmine Crockett calls Greg Abbott governor Hot Wheels. So this has probably been one of the trending things in media today. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, she's a very vocal representative for the Democratic Party. She actually called Governor Abbott, and this is a governor, I believe he's from Texas. I gotta look him up. And he is in a wheelchair. So they were at some type of conference or something, because she was dressed up. She wasn't in, it seemed like a work suit, and she called Governor Abbott Hot Wheels. So, you know, not the greatest look for a congresswoman, calling a governor that's in a wheelchair Hot Wheels. And you would think this wouldn't come from a Democrat. Gregory Abbott, where is he from? No, not him. You would think we wouldn't hear this kind of talk from Democrats, because they're very, very big on DEI. You don't make fun of people. So to see Jasmine Crockett kind of do this to Governor Greg Abbott, it was kind of distasteful, and I'm not gonna lie. He's from Texas. Yeah, he's from Texas. And Governor Abbott is in a wheelchair because I think it was a decade ago, maybe longer, a tree fell on him and the tree left him paralyzed. So ever since then, he's been in a wheelchair. He's from Texas. They were at this conference. Jasmine Crockett calls him Hot Wheels because he's in a wheelchair. It kind of goes wildfire. So we're going to react to that today. Guys, do me a favor while you're in the chat. Hit that like button for me, guys. It's free. It takes 1 second. Hit the like button for me. Then we're going to switch gears and go over to Fox News. Even The View won't defend this Democrat. So The View is reacting to Jasmine Crockett's comments on Governor Abbott being called Hot Wheels by her because he's in a wheelchair. Then we're going to go over to some Canadian news. I always say on this channel, Canada is my second most watched country. They watch my channel the second most, and that's really to the United States, sometimes to Germany. So I keep up with my Canadian news as much as I can. Carney offshore Caribbean haven exposed. Proves Pierre right on concerns with security details. Shout out to Portuguese Pie. He has 48.9 thousand subscribers. In case you guys are wondering, Mark Carney is the current sitting Prime Minister of Canada. Pierre is one of the candidates who is running for Prime Minister against him. Pierre's more conservative. Mark Carney is more liberal, on the liberal side. And Pierre has voiced some concerns about Mark Carney not being very transparent about his financial dealings. He has a lot of conflict of interest because of just his money, his networking, some business relationships. And Pierre is saying that, you know, if he is going to be Prime Minister of Canada, what is Mark Carney going to do about these conflicts of interest that he has and is going to run into, which I think is it's a pretty valid question. In the United States, our president has told us that if Elon Musk runs into any conflicts of interest, that he will dismiss himself from them and that he will proceed to work his government duties. Evil, shout out to you. Thanks for stopping by. Hit that like button for me. So our president is transparent about that, you know. So I think the Prime Minister of Canada needs to be transparent to the people about something like that. If you have a conflict of interest or if you run into one, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle it? Then we're going to switch gears and go to our last clip of the live, which is by Cliff Buell. He is a YouTube Christian content creator. We usually end our live streams with a clip from Cliff every night. Tonight we'll be reacting to Christians Must Listen to This. And it is a young man talking about our ear gate and our eye gate. Now some of you are probably like, what in the heck is that? And that is just in reference to what you hear and what you watch and see with your eyes. The young man is talking about how we tend to leave those doors open and let the devil in because of things we watch and things we listen to. Some of you guys might not subscribe to things like that. It's fine if you don't. It is something that we could talk about from a spiritual standpoint, and we'll get to that. So with all of that being said, welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Kieran Smith, call me Q, and we are on the corner. We're on the corner, ladies and gentlemen. So first up on the menu, senators and legislators pushing for investigation on Signal chat released by The Atlantic. Now, Signal has actually been one of the platforms that is said to be used by government officials and is said to be secure, especially high-targeted, high-end government officials, like someone like the vice president, someone like the secretary of defense, right? This was actually an app that Peter Ducey on Fox News read a quote about it that said it's actually one of the most secure apps that high-level officials are to use and should use. So we know that. Now, all of a sudden, we see some of the Democrats during these Senate hearings saying that, oh, this app is only good for phone calls. It's actually not good for text messages, and we've been briefed on that. So we see the jargon trying to be flipped there and switched around as to now President Trump's cabinet could have been using illegitimate app that actually officials should not be able to use, when on the contrary, that is not true. So we are going to react to that. I mean, it's getting pretty deep here. Like now, some people are even calling for Pete Hegseth to step down from his position because this had happened. And I knew this was going to take place. I knew a lot of our far leftists were going to run with it. So let's see what the senators and legislators are pushing for.
On Capitol Hill, the president is defending his defense secretary in the wake of continued fallout from the use of a non-government approved messaging app to discuss a military operation. But lawmakers from both sides of the aisle say they want more details from the administration about what happened. Natalie Brent has the latest from the White House.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth arrived in the Philippines Thursday morning as a growing number of Democrats called for his resignation.
He should be fired.
Nobody's texting or plans.
Speaking Wednesday, the defense secretary continued to deny disclosing classified information, despite the Atlantic posting new details about what Hegseth shared in a
Now I'm gonna read this to you guys, but I don't know if you guys saw Chuck Schumer. He's right there, and they're asking Chuck what he thinks about what went on with Pete Hegseth in the chat being leaked, and this is what he says.
resignation.
He should be fired.
Nobody's texting or plans.
Speaking Wednesday, the defense secretary continued to deny disclosing classified information.
It says, The Atlantic, here are the attack plans that Trump advisors shared on Signal. The administration has downplayed the importance of the text messages inadvertently sent to the Atlantic's editor-in-chief. Okay.
Despite the Atlantic posting new details about what Hegseth.
So new details, Pete Hegseth team update, time now 11:44 Eastern time. Weather is favorable, just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch, 12:15 ET, F-18 launch, first strike package, 13:45 trigger-based F-18 first strike. Window starts, target terrorist is at his known location, so should be on time. Also, strike drones launch, MQ-9s, 14:10, which is 2:10 in the afternoon. More F-18s launch, second strike package, 14:15, which is 2:15 in the afternoon. Strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, pending earlier trigger-based targets.
That's shared in a group chat on Signal, a non-government approved messaging app.
Then they have something down here at 15:36, which is 3:36 in the afternoon. F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launch.
Including the exact timing and equipment to be used in a strike on Houthi rebels.
There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information.
I think it's a witch hunt.
President Trump is still standing by his national security team and defending Secretary Hegseth.
Hegseth is doing a great job. He had nothing to do with this.
But the president says he'll ask Hegseth to review whether the contents of the Signal chat should have been classified.
Today, the top Republican and Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee sent a letter to the acting Inspector General of the Department of Defense asking for an inquiry into the incident.
We have never denied that this was a mistake. We have said we are making changes. We are looking into the matter to ensure it can never happen again.
The White House has not ruled out the possibility that someone could be fired over the incident.
So President Trump also says an investigation into the matter would not bother him, although it is unclear at this point who would lead the investigation, since Trump fired the Defense Department's Inspector General in January. Do not.
Well, yeah. So obviously, we've had some Senate hearings. We've had some people ask, "Is the FBI going to start an investigation into this?" And right now, we have seen people like Kash Patel say that right now there is no update for the FBI to launch an investigation on something like this. Some people think it's an inside job, so because of that, that's why Kash Patel's not moving in on it. I wouldn't say that. I would just say that based on the evidence at hand, you know, when Tulsi Gabbard, John Radcliffe, Pete Hegseth, they have, or Kash Patel, they have all said, like, you know, this wasn't classified. This was information that was already out there. Some of the public already knew about this information. These were details that were talked about, so it wasn't anything that was classified that if it got out there, it would harm the American people. So I read it to you guys. I mean, you see times, you know, you see details, times and details really, but you don't see sources, you don't see locations, you don't see names. You don't see like transportation necessarily being set up. I mean, you do see a mention of tomahawks and things like that, but I wouldn't say it's anything classified. We kind of knew about the strikes with the Houthis and strikes in Yemen. Like, this was public knowledge. So I did think that they were being a bit overzealous about this. If I'm honest with you guys, I did. But I wasn't shocked about it. I mean, there's a lot of people on the far left, especially extremists, who are waiting for someone in the Trump cabinet to mess up. So it's to be expected that it would be, you know, this bad. But I did think it was an overreach to call for the resignation of John Radcliffe, who is the CIA director, and the resignation of Pete Hegseth, which is the Secretary of Defense. So I thought it was a little bit overzealous, but not shocking at all. So switching gears a little bit, we're gonna go over to Bill O'Reilly. So as far as the Democrats go, he's gonna talk to us a little bit about Bernie Sanders. Now he's been friends with Bernie, or let's just say acquaintances. I don't know if they're friends or buddies, but he's known Bernie Sanders for a lot of years. He said it's been about 30. He says Bernie tends to kind of flow with the wind. He kind of goes wherever the wind blows him. So I thought that was interesting that was Bill O'Reilly's take on him. I think in his older age, right? Shout out to you, Bill, right? Wine gets fine with time. That I think Bill is very balanced, right? Back in the day, people would say, "Oh, Bill O'Reilly is too this or he's too that." I think he's a lot fairer nowadays, so that's why I tend to react to him. And you know, he's a lot older, so I tend to gravitate towards wisdom. And for that, Bill O'Reilly has some really good takes because he's been in the game just a long time. He's been at this, 40 years? So yeah, even if people disagree with him or don't like him, that doesn't take away from his skill set at all. So I want to see some of the things he's going to tell us about Bernie Sanders. I actually did not get a chance to watch all of this. So let's jump in and see what Bill has to say.
So this Bernie Sanders has always amused me. And I'm not saying that in a condescending way. I know his game. I know who he is. I've never interviewed him. He runs what I call, because he knows I know what he's all about. Just a little background. Bernie Sanders, 83 years old, senator from Vermont, communist. He and his wife honeymooned in Moscow. You know anybody else who did that? I don't. Weather a little rough. All that going on in Moscow. Way back then, it was hardcore communism.
My phone was ringing.
Bernie lives large, had a nice chateau on Lake Champlain, north of Burlington. I rode by one time. It's pretty nice. Bernie's got nice digs in D.C. His wife made a ton of money being a college president in Vermont. The college went bankrupt, but Mrs. Sanders took out a lot of dough. That was controversial. I didn't really look into it too much, but there's a lot of stuff floating around. Bernie takes care of his family, a lot of people benefiting from his affluence. But Bernie's a communist. Now, what do I mean by that? Bernie Sanders believes that the government of the United States should have the right to seize private property and take it away.
No.
For tax purposes.
No.
Redistribution of income.
No, sir.
Let me back it up. Bernie is the primary mover of a wealth tax. What is that? A wealth tax is after you pay your taxes and the take-home pay gets in your bank account, you buy stuff. And if you're doing very well, you could buy a Lamborghini or a yacht or a mansion or paintings or whatever. Okay? But remember, that's take-home pay money.
Right.
You've already paid your obligation to the states and the feds, and sometimes the locals. Okay. So Sanders somehow believes that the federal government has the right to come into your house, look around, and take a percentage of what you have purchased or inherited. That's communism.
Yep.
That's what happens
At its finest.
in China, in Cuba, in Vietnam, in Laos.
Russia.
Russia says it's not communist anymore, but
Yeah.
they're close. If Putin wants to take your stuff, he's going to take your stuff.
I agree with Bill on that. If Putin wants to take your stuff, he's going to take your stuff. He definitely comes off like that type of leader.
Okay. Now Sanders says he isn't a communist. He's a democratic socialist. Sure. Okay. If you were just that, you wouldn't be after the wealth tax, Bernie. I know it, you know it. Folks may not know it, but we know it, right? So Bernie Sanders is now out on the oligarchy tour. He's running around with Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman from New York, telling everybody that trillionaires, billionaires, there aren't any trillionaires, billionaires, as Bernie might say, run the country, and Trump's giving them everything, and Elon Musk, and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to believe it, you believe it. People believe what they want to believe. So Bernie and Ocasio did a runaround, and that's their pitch. There are, I'd say, 30% of Americans who want socialism. They don't want to compete because capitalism's rough. You can fail.
Oh yeah.
Millions have. You're not guaranteed any success. Socialism, you are. So if you move to Denmark and you become a citizen there, cradle of entitlement, you're not going to get rich. You're not going to.
Yeah, you're not going to get rich in Denmark, but you're also not going to want for anything. So they have it set up to where the government does supply a lot for their citizens.
Have a lot of stuff, but you're not going to have to work for it. You're going to provide. Boom, 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 boom. Not going to starve. You'll have health care. You'll have retirement. And you don't have to really kill yourself.
Nope.
Not here. You want affluence, you got to work hard. A lot of people don't want them. I don't want to work hard. I want to go fishing. I want to smoke pot. I want to do whatever I want to do. Now, Bernie is the darling of the media.
Why has to be pot?
Now, most of the media are rabid capitalists, greedy sons of you know
I know
what.
why he said pot.
I know that. But they have a sympathy for the socialists and for the far left for Bernie. So Bernie goes Sunday, March 23rd on ABC's This Week and talks about the new Trump administration. Go.
Is there anything that you think Trump has done right?
Yeah, I mean, I think cracking down on fentanyl, making sure our borders are stronger. Look, nobody thinks illegal immigration is appropriate. Now, I have to think we need comprehensive immigration reform. But I don't think that it's appropriate for people to be coming across the border illegally. So we've got to work now on comprehensive immigration reform.
What a bunch of bull. So he had 4 years, Sanders, to tell President Biden to knock off the
And he
open
was
border.
very quiet.
They didn't say a word.
Yeah.
Nothing. So don't give me this, oh, nobody thinks it's appropriate. Come on, you phony. It's the phony. But now that Trump's gaining currency by closing the border and cracking down on the illegal migrants, which is what got Trump elected, okay, now, yeah, fentanyl. Where was the fentanyl before? Bernie? This is what I mean by this guy drives me nuts. And then he goes, comprehensive immigration reform. What that is amnesty.
Yeah.
When you hear the words
It can
comprehensive
be. More than likely it is.
immigration reform, that's amnesty for all undocumented migrants who are here. That's what it is. And yeah, they might appropriate a little bit of money to build a little wall here and there, and maybe there would be a test or a tax that undocumented migrants might have to take. But it's ball. It's you're here, you're in, you're a citizen, and this is what you have to do. That's, to the Democrats, comprehensive immigration reform. Okay? Now, to me, I want an immigration bill. I'm with the barn burner on that. But I don't want amnesty, because that's ridiculous. What I would do, and the fair thing to do, is have everybody register who do not have the proper paperwork to be here, and the government analyze what their situation is. If they have contributed to our society and are good people that we can demonstrably see, then you would give them a pathway. If not, out of here.
Why? Yeah, and I can understand why he's saying that, because why let so many people in your country, and it's going to interfere with the citizens already there, especially if they're not coming to the country and they're not being progressive, or they're not essentially adding any value to the country.
So the migrant, him or herself, is taking a chance to register. You don't register your deporting, you can never come back.
Yep.
That's fair. I don't want to throw people out of here who, for no reason, were brought here by their parents or grandparents or whatever, they had any say in it, and then you uproot them after they've been living here for 10 years and throw them back into a foreign situation. That's cruel. That's not right.
Yeah. See, Bill he can be balanced. Most people would say, most people that are too far right now would say something like, oh, well, that's not our problem. Like, you brought your kids here. You probably had them here on purpose, or you knew what you were getting yourself into, so that's not our problem. But Bill says no. Like, you bring a kid here without, they have no control over it, and now they've been here 10, 12 years, and you uproot them and put them in a violent situation where now they can be raped or killed. That's not right. So he can be balanced, and that's what I can appreciate.
But we can have a sane immigration policy, but that's not what Sanders wants. He wants a blanket. And that'll never happen with the Republican Party, ever. It didn't happen under Biden for 4 years. They couldn't get anything done. And Biden controlled Congress for a bit at that time. Couldn't get anything done. Never got it done on Obama, 8 years, never in a million years. Most Americans see that's not fair. Blanket immigration amnesty is not fair. Bernie doesn't care whether it's fair or not. But getting back to the main threat about Bernie Sanders, and a lot of people don't take him seriously, I do. All right, he's peddling communism. That's what he wants. He wants seizure of private property and assets. And that is so deadly wrong. It's never succeeded anywhere in the world. The people who live under the oppression of communism are all poor.
Mostly, yeah.
None of them are prosperous. And that would lead to a civil war in America. If that movement ever got traction, there'd be
probably
fighting.
right.
I know it. Most Americans, traditional Americans, are not going to accept the government coming into their house taking their stuff. I'm not. No, I'm not going to say I'd be violent, but I wouldn't let them come in. I'd have to be arrested. They're not coming to my house to take my stuff. No. Okay, so that's the commentary on YouTube. We are pleased to be here. We'll have another one later this week. Thank you for...
Well, thank you, Bill. We appreciate that. So, yeah, and Bill's not lying about that. I mean, come on. We're all Americans here, at least those of you that are here that are. And if you're traditional American, they're not going to go for that. Like, government or no government. The average American can be quite belligerent when it comes to just going in their house and taking their things, because let's just be honest, in America we don't live like that, right? Like, now if you get into some legal trouble, then yeah, you might get some things taken from you. You might get some money taken from you, but just like we don't live in the sense where the government just comes in and just takes our things, right? This is not like China or something, or Cuba. It's not like that, right? So he is absolutely right. I think it's funny that he says he thinks it would start a civil war. He's probably right. It might seem overzealous to some people, but in America, I wouldn't put it past us. It probably would start some type of civil war here. So switching gears a little bit, live now from Fox. Shout out to them, 4.65 million subscribers. Jasmine Crockett calls Greg Abbott governor Hot Wheels. So this was not a good move for Congresswoman Crockett. It has not done good in the media as far as her reputation or her image. And not that it was already doing the best, because she is one of the most vocal in the Democratic Party. I would probably say other than AOC and Bernie Sanders. I don't even know if he's calling himself a Democrat nowadays. But I would say she's very vocal, and as far as for what she's trying to do for the Democrats, I don't think this was the best move. When you have The View going against you, I mean The View of all platforms, saying that they just can't defend what she said because, she's better than that, or like it just was not compassionate, and as I said, you wouldn't expect this from the Democratic Party, because the way they like to push DEI and like you can't make fun of anyone, and we show favoritism to this particular group of people especially. You wouldn't think it would come from that party, but they're in so much disarray that they're kind of just, they have a little bit of potty mouth right now. So sometimes they're just flying off at the handle. And we're hearing a lot of random things come from them. And Hot Wheels was just happened to be one of them that came from Jasmine Crockett. So let's listen in and see what live now from Fox covered.
And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's talk about Texas politics that's really making its way, though, to Washington and nationwide. We have a live picture there over the Dallas area skyline here because the Democratic Congresswoman that represents the Dallas area, her name, Jasmine Crockett, is in some hot water after making some disparaging comments related to Governor Greg Abbott at a gala in Los Angeles sponsored by the Human Rights Campaign over the weekend here. Now, HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, that's a prominent LGBTQ organization here on us out talking. I'll let you listen in. This is what Congresswoman Crockett said over the weekend. Let's watch.
Hot Wheels down there, come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot ass mess.
Okay, so that was Congresswoman Crockett there referring to Governor Abbott as the Hot Wheels governor, but then going on to describe him as a hot A mess there. Anyway, Fox's Stephen Dial, he's on this story there. He's from Fox 4 in Dallas. Let's listen.
Dallas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is being called out by other elected officials for her comments last Saturday at a Human Rights Campaign event.
Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot ass mess.
Referring to Governor Greg Abbott as Hot Wheels. Abbott was partially paralyzed when a tree fell on him decades ago.
Hey, I'm gonna move on.
Multiple Texas lawmakers took to social media to condemn Crockett for her remarks. Texas Senator John Cornyn saying, quote, Crockett's comments are disgraceful. Can you imagine if a Republican said something like this? It would be on the front page of the New York Times and all over CNN. I spoke to Crockett Tuesday. She had this to say, quote, I said that he was a hot expletive mess, referencing his terrible policies. Never at any time did I reference his condition. I am even more appalled that the people that...
Hold on, I want to go back because I have to read something to the live. Say that again.
You want to ice small, right?
Yeah, that's fine. Alright guys, let me read this to you because YouTube probably flipped it, so like you probably can't see it. It says Crockett's comments are disgraceful. So this was from I think this was from Senator Cornyn. Crockett's comments are disgraceful. Can you imagine if a Republican said something like this? It would be on front page of NYT and all over CNN. End wokeness. So we out in these hot A streets with the Hot Wheels governor who are hot A mess. Profound. So yeah, this didn't work out well for Jasmine Crockett. I mean, the man's in a wheelchair, so I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure like why this joke was even in her mind. But like she said over and over again that she did not explicitly point out his condition. That she pointed out that he was a hot mess, you know, more explicitly than that. But she says, I didn't point out his condition. But, you know, just the Hot Wheels remark is really what's pretty much going viral and sent people over the top. So.
Can you imagine if a Republican said something like this? It would be on the front page of the New York Times and all over CNN. I spoke to Crockett Tuesday. She had this to say, quote, I said that he was a hot...
Alright, so you guys probably can't read this, so I'm going to read it because it's probably flipped. So, controversial comments. It says, I said was that he was a hot A mess, referencing his terrible policies. Never at any time did I reference his condition. I am even more appalled that the people that unequivocally support Trump, who is known for racially insensitive nicknames and mocking the uniquely abled, are outraged. Keep this energy up for all people, not just your political adversaries. And that was from Jasmine Crockett.
Expletive mess, referencing his terrible policies. Never at any time did I reference his condition. I am even more appalled that the people that unequivocally support Trump, who is known for racially insensitive nicknames and mocking the uniquely abled, are outraged. Keep this energy up for all people, not just your political adversaries.
On March 29th, it's my birthday. And all I want to see happen on my birthday is for Elon to be taken down.
Crockett?
So that was pretty controversial too, because then people were like, all she wants to do is see Elon taken out. It sparked controversy with Pam Bondi, and that's the attorney general, and a lot of people took it as a threat, and she had to like kind of come back and say, you know, of course everything that I say or I practice is non-violent. So, you know, just speaking too fast or just potty of the mouth. This is what we've been seeing with the Democratic Party.
It is also in hot water for this comment she made about Elon Musk, who has been the target of protests and whose Tesla dealerships have been hit by vandals. Moments after the remark, Crockett gave a clarification, saying she did not mean violence towards Musk.
I'm saying that figuratively. Obviously, everything that I am promoting is nonviolent. And so definitely don't want anyone to take that word literal in any way.
Those comments did not sit well with the U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who thinks Crockett should be censured by Congress.
And yet she turns and says, oh, I'm not calling for violence. Well, she is an elected public official. And so she needs to tread very carefully because...
See, and now if she's censured, you know, and if I'm honest, I'm a little bit surprised that hasn't happened yet. But the only reason why I'm a little bit surprised that hasn't happened yet is because there's been a lot that we've seen in the media regarding Jasmine Crockett. Like a lot of things said. So I was a little shocked it hasn't happened yet. But if I think about it, it hasn't been too crazy. But sometimes with the expletives, and the Democrats have been cursing a lot more lately. I was under the impression that, wow, I'm kind of surprised this hasn't happened yet. But now because of this, I could see, you know, someone kind of using this along with incidences that have happened very recently, but in the past, and say, you know what, historically, this is just bad behavior for a congresswoman, so we're going to censure her. In case you guys are wondering what censuring means, that means that the House would basically call, it's like a formal spanking, if you would. Like, it's kind of, you're there, you know, people are like giving testimonies about you, and you're in, you know, the courtroom, but it's not necessarily that you're gonna lose your position, but it definitely is more of a formality type of environment, and it's more serious. It's not just kind of like a slap on the wrist, and if it is, it's a very formal, you know, slap on the wrist. So, you know, now censuring is kind of being thrown around
very carefully because nothing will happen to Elon Musk.
All right, we thank Fox 4 reporter Stephen Dial there from Dallas. Well, Congresswoman Crockett is responding. This was just in the last hour on social media, even more fully here. I want to read the entire tweet thread. She says this.
So this is the part that I can see, but he's going to say a little bit more, so I'll read what I can see. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, it says, I wasn't thinking about the governor's condition. I was thinking about the planes, trains, and automobiles he used to transfer migrants into communities led by black mayors, deliberately stoking tension and fear among the most vulnerable. Literally, the next line I said was that, and I think she's going to say, he was a hot A mess.
I wasn't thinking about the governor's condition. I was thinking about the planes, trains, and automobiles he used to transfer migrants into communities led by black mayors, deliberately stoking tension and fear among the most vulnerable. She says, literally, the next line I said was that he was a hot A mess, referencing his terrible policies. At no point did I mention or allude to his condition. So I'm even more appalled that the very people who unequivocally support Trump, a man known for racially insensitive nicknames and mocking those with disabilities, are now outraged. She says, keep that same energy for all people, not just your political adversaries. She says, finally, this is yet another distraction. Instead of obsessing over and...
Yeah, right here, she says, finally, this is yet another distraction. Instead of obsessing over and hanging onto my every word, maybe my political foes should focus on doing the work of the people who elected us to improve their lives.
Hanging on to my every word, maybe my political foes should focus on doing the work of the people who elected us to improve their lives here. But some of her Republican colleagues there from the Texas congressional delegation are not really taking this lightly here, going so far as to issue and propose censure resolutions on the House floor against Congresswoman Crockett here. I want to put this up from our colleague there at Fox, producer at the Pentagon, Liz.
So Liz Elkind said, Scoop, Randy Weber is introducing a censure resolution against Jasmine Crockett for calling Texas Governor Greg Abbott HotWheels. Draft resolution obtained by @Fox News. So it doesn't show us all of it, HRS House Resolution and the House of Representatives, United States, March 25th, 2025. It says, whereas on March 22nd, 2025, the representative from Texas, Ms. Jasmine Crockett, spoke at a human rights campaign event in a manner unbecoming of a member of Congress, calling the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, Governor HotWheels, and a hot A mess. Whereas the remarks from the representative from Texas are discriminatory in nature. I said that because he's in a wheelchair, so it can be discrimination against those who are handicapped. Discriminatory in nature and are the latest in a continued series, I said the same thing, in a continued series of inappropriate comments expressed by the representative from Texas, such as on May 16th, 2024, during a house, and they went back to last year. They can really just find, you can clip things that she's just said this year that I was like, ouch, that was a little bit, she might get in trouble for that. So such as on May 16, 2024, during a House Committee on Oversight and Investigations hearing, Representative Crockett espoused inflammatory comments about the appearance of another member of Congress. Now therefore be it resolved that the Representative Jasmine Crockett be censured. Representative Jasmine Crockett forthwith present herself in the well of the House of the Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, and the Representative Jasmine Crockett be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker. Yeah, a lot of this I said before we even got to this clip. I said a lot of this stuff. I said I was surprised. Already, you guys can literally rewind the live. I said I was already surprised that they haven't gotten her for other stuff. And this is like, I don't have anything against Jasmine Crockett, but this is just listening to the media and just hearing someone's response to something or how they might blurt something out. And there's just been times where she's came out a little bit rough, right? Dare I say what people have said to me in the past, a little bit abrasive. So, maybe she doesn't mean much harm, like, based on motives, like coming from a place of motives, but just the sound, can be very deceiving and people can take that a certain way.
Elkind, or on Capitol Hill rather, she got this scoop here, meaning she got it first before everyone else. She says Congressman Randy Weber is introducing a censure resolution against Jasmine Crockett for calling Texas Governor Greg Abbott HotWheels. The draft resolution was obtained by Fox News here. So wanted to make sure we got this on your radar. So Congressman Weber told Fox News Digital he would introduce a censure resolution against Crockett imminently. He told Fox News Digital, the story of our great governor of Texas is one of unwavering resilience and perseverance.
It's coming.
Meanwhile, the actions of Jasmine Crockett stooping to vile levels of discrimination and despicable political attacks are nothing short of reprehensible. He said the House should censure Crockett for the venomous rhetoric she spews as a representative of the Democratic Party. He went on to say it's painfully obvious she was never taught a single thing about Texas class, as her behavior is a disgrace to everything Texas and the United States stands for. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not there is an appetite by House Republican leadership to take this up, to push this through, whether it's going to gain any purchase through other House Republicans here, though Randy Weber, he's his own congressman from Texas, a Republican, issuing and proposing a censure resolution against Crockett for her comments about Governor Greg Abbott that she made over the weekend in Los Angeles.
Let me ask you a quick question. What if...
Yeah, and I mean, we do have to take into consideration if this was someone else, how would Ms. Crockett feel, right? How would Jasmine Crockett feel if someone said that, if she wasn't the one up there speaking and it was someone else? Let's say it was a Caucasian senator and they said that to a black senator that was in a wheelchair. How would she have taken that? Oh, I'm pretty sure we would have heard from her. I'm most certainly sure. If you follow Jasmine Crockett, then you know what I'm saying. You definitely would have heard from her. So switching gears, not too much because this is Fox News, but they're covering something that The View spoke about. It says, even The View won't defend this Democrat. So this is in reference to Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. and what she said about Governor Greg Abbott regarding him being in a wheelchair and calling him Hot Wheels. So The View kind of reacts to this. Fox News is kind of reacting to the comment and what The View said. So let's just jump right in and see what Fox News had to say.
All right, even the ladies of The View cannot defend Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett after she insulted Greg Abbott as Governor Hot Wheels.
Should not have made the comment at all.
You should leave that stuff to the media. This was beneath her.
Yeah.
She's just too good for this.
I agree with that because I respect her, but it's just never okay to mock someone's disability.
I admire Jasmine Crockett. I do think she's an effective messenger. I think this was a mistake, and I think when you make a mistake, you have to own it.
She's too good for this. Fox News contributor and senior writer for the Washington Examiner, Joe Consa. What's your name? Joe joins me now. What does it say, Joe, when you've lost The View?
Oh, it says a lot. I'm not sure she lost The View completely, Todd.
Okay.
I mean, when they said that, she was beneath making such a comment, or when I hear, oh, she's a good messenger, or, she's somebody that I respect. Sonny Hostin said that. No, she doesn't deserve even that right. I mean, this new AOC, who is Jasmine Crockett, all I know is that she said just last week that all she wants for her birthday is for Elon Musk to be, quote, taken out, unquote. Or when she said just recently that Ted Cruz needs to be smashed over the head hard, this is a very dangerous and very unserious person who deserves zero respect. And the fact that The View kind of tried to couch it like, yeah, you shouldn't make fun of the guy in the wheelchair who's been in there since he was 26 years old when he got hit by a tree. That's a 100-0 issue. They had to say that. But the fact they couched it was bothersome because Jasmine Crockett deserves no respect or no gravitas at this point based on the things she said just in the last week, for instance.
Yeah, that's a good point. Our own Hillary Vaughn sort of confronted Crockett, if you will, on the Hill. Watch this.
Okay. All right.
I put out a statement regarding that. You didn't apologize. I put out a statement. Why would I apologize when I put out a statement? My statement was split. But you didn't apologize. My statement was according to Governor. My statement was clear. I'm in a wheelchair. I don't know how that's offensive. I don't understand why the disability needed me to repeat this.
Right, but why won't you apologize?
I put out a statement. Did you have an apology? So read my statement. I did read it. Did I have an apology? Okay. Well, I'm done. You don't.
I mean, no apology there.
So the reporter is asking her, why wouldn't you apologize about this? Like, you said this to a man that was in a wheelchair, like, and Jasmine Crockett is saying, like, I put my statement out, like, read my statement, and the reporter's insisting on, yeah, but you didn't say sorry, and this, this is a governor, and this man is in a wheelchair, and Jasmine Crockett is like, well, read my statement, and the reporter's like, I did read your statement, are you going to apologize? And that's when Jasmine Crockett is kind of like, I'm done with this, at that point, she's kind of just done with the interview.
Whatsoever, Joe. I look at that and say, Crockett can dish it out, but cannot take it. Your reaction?
No. And by the way, why is Hillary Vaughn the only reporter putting a microphone to her to ask the question, well, why didn't you apologize? She didn't apologize. She said, oh, Governor Hot Wheels, I was actually talking about the governor sending immigrants and illegal immigrants to cities that have black mayors. Like, no, you weren't. And she's made that comment in the past, too, by the way, about Governor Hot Wheels. So, yeah, she cannot take it. And the fact that Hillary Vaughn is the only reporter. Where's Caitlin Collins? She seems to want to really ask a lot of questions when she's, interrupting. So I don't know where, like, CNN is or NBC or all these other outlets. Jasmine Crockett should have 10 reporters around her asking her to explain herself, and obviously that's not happening.
Well, Joe, they don't want to offend a potential contributor when Jasmine Crockett runs for Senate in the great state of Texas and loses by 40 points, after they actually need a job, and they don't want to offend potential talent, quote unquote. The CEO of NPR was asked about how the outlet covered up the Hunter Biden laptop story. Yeah, still talking about it. Here's what she said.
First of all, I do want to say that NPR acknowledges that we were mistaken in failing to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story more aggressively and sooner.
It's unfortunate that NPR ignored the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Congressman, I would love to say that we actually believe we made a mistake on the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Kudos for acknowledging it, but doesn't it ring a little hollow now half a decade later, Joe?
Yeah, 5 years later, when everybody else has admitted that, oh, yeah, I guess that was a story we should have covered. That was the only thing that Catherine Mayer had to say there at this point. And overall, just that testimony she gave on Capitol Hill yesterday, we witnessed another human Chernobyl. I mean, she actually said that her past statements and social media posts, which include calling Donald Trump a sociopath, which said that America is addicted to white supremacy. She said that had no bearing on NPR's editorial decisions whatsoever. Go listen to MSNPR sometime. Trust me, you'll have a decidedly different opinion. The place makes the Washington Post look centrist. So overall, when she couldn't even defend that there are 87 Democrats on the editorial board at NPR and 0 Republicans, that tells us that not one more taxpayer dollar can go to NPR at this point. Elon Musk, end that spigot already, because they've proven that they are anything but, well, fair and balanced. Todd.
Joe Concha. There, I got it. I'm 1 for 2 today. Thank you, sir.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm right.
Yeah, and as far as the NPRs, I forgot what I was gonna say on that. It'll probably come back to me. But yeah, covering the Hunter Biden story, not doing it so aggressively, it just makes you wonder, right? Were these people in cahoots with someone else? Like, if you are a reporter or if you have a platform where you cover stories and you report out to the people, like, why wouldn't you cover something so aggressively? Perhaps because at the time it was the president's son and they didn't want to cause any negative light towards themselves. Some people have alluded to that. So, you know, who knows if it is anything like that. As far as Jasmine Crockett, let's see if the censuring happens. Let's see. I know they Al Green was censured after his behavior at President Trump's joint speech to Congress. That was pretty bad. I watched that live. We got a chance to cover that live here on the channel. President Trump stood up. He began to speak. I'm saying not even 3 minutes in, you see Al Green and he's like holding his cane up and he's like, you know, shouting like, you don't have a mandate or something like that. And it was extremely disruptive. You know, it was. I understand he wanted to make a point. I understand it was a lot of tension there. That night, the Democrats were super upset, and we know this because they did not stand up for any single accomplishment that the United States or President Trump had done. They didn't even stand up for a 13-year-old boy who had brain cancer that President Trump made an honorary Secret Service agent. So at that point, when I saw that, I knew that the Democrats were really on something. Like, I already knew that the party was having trouble, but let's just say that after I saw the joint speech to Congress, I was like, okay, the Democratic Party, like, they've definitely gone off a cliff at this point. So definitely a little bit worried about that there with the Democratic Party, but we're going to see where that takes us. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and go over to some Canadian news. But I did want to cover something that Pierre Poilievre said. There were 2 things he addressed. He did a message to Canadian families after President Trump dropped his 25% tariffs on automobiles. So he did a message to Canada based off of that when those tariffs dropped. And then there was another one. Poilievre asked Carney's financial ties with China. So I want to look at those 2 things before we jump into one more thing about Carney now and his offshore accounts, some of them being exposed. As far as the Caribbean. So we're going to look at Pierre first. So first, his message to Canadian families tonight. Let's look at that.
Thank you very much. I want to start by condemning, without equivocation, the unjustified and unprovoked tariffs that President Trump has now announced against our auto sector. These tariffs will damage his workers and his economy, just as they will damage ours. We must retaliate and target goods and services that we don't need, can buy elsewhere, or make ourselves to maximize the impact on the Americans while minimizing the impact on ourselves. But before I go any further about these unjustified tariffs and how we're going to respond to them, let me speak to the workers in the auto sector.
Workers.
You're afraid right now. You're anxious. You wonder how you're going to pay your mortgage.
He's definitely good at appealing.
You're thinking about the conversations you may need to have with your children
here
about whether they can register for next year's hockey or this summer's soccer. You don't know if you'll be able to stay in the same city or what's going to happen to your future. Canada will be there for you. We will be there for you. We will ensure that you have income replacement, put food on the table, and money in your bank account. We'll make sure that businesses directly affected will have the liquidity they need to get through this dispute. And we will unite as Canadians to protect our affected sectors. But more than that, we need to become strong, self-reliant, sovereign, so that we can stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the Americans. What is clear is that 10 years of economic weakness have made us more reliant than ever on the Americans. 75% of our exports go to one country.
Oh, 75, that's a lot.
Almost all of our energy, most of our raw materials go south because we can't get them anywhere else. We need to take drastic action to build an economic fortress in Canada, able to reach other markets around the world, repealing the anti-pipeline law, rapidly building LNG liquefaction plants, mines, factories, expanding and making our ports functional so that we can move our goods to other places around the world, knocking down the barriers between our provinces so that we can trade with ourselves for a change. Passing a bring it home tax cut on work, investment, home building, and energy to make this the best place in the world to bring back the $500 billion that Liberals pushed out of the country over the last decade. Then and only then will we be able to properly stand up to the Americans and stand up for ourselves. Now is not a time for weakness. Now is not a time to continue on with the failures that got us into this place of dependency. Now is the time to take back control and relaunch our economy so that we can confront the president's unjustified threats and tariffs in a position of strength. We will do this for our people, for our land, for our home, for Canada first, for a change. Thank you.
Yeah, very much a thing that President Trump would do. Like, even if you guys noticed, right after the results in November, President Trump kind of just assumed the presidency, even though he wasn't officially there yet. And there were times where he was already having press conferences, making messages for the country to hear him and his plans. Like, he was already doing things like this, and Pierre has very much resembled President Trump, you know, in promoting himself for prime minister. So I would say he's doing a very decent job. I'm a little bit concerned about President Trump's changing his tune. Early on, he seemed to be much more in support of Pierre Poilievre, and so did Elon Musk. And I know Elon has been more quiet, but President Trump has went on the record to say that he'd rather deal with a liberal when it comes to Canada than a conservative. If I'm honest, and I try to be transparent and balanced on my channel, I think that that's much more of a power move. And I have said that I didn't like that. You know, I have been transparent about that because every country has the right to have its own sovereignty to, you know, be independent. Every country has that right, and President Trump wanted that for the United States, and he knew that we didn't need another liberal. So I just really didn't like that stance. But, you know, I'm not going to like every single thing that the president does, and I don't have to agree on every single thing, and I don't, and I'm usually honest about when I don't. So I want to watch one more thing that Pierre is doing before we jump over to some of Carney's exposure. It says Poilievre asked about Carney's financial ties with China. So now he also has financial ties with China. Let me say what's up to the chat. W chat, man. Milk and Kuchen, what's up? How you guys doing? Thanks for stopping by. Do me a favor and hit that like button while you're in the chat. So we're going to watch one more thing by Pierre.
Meetings.
Still shifting over to our Canadian news. Let's see what Pierre mentions about Mark Carney's ties with China. We just keep finding things out about this guy. You know, between the Simple Investor, the Toronto Sun, and a couple of other people I watch that cover Canadian news, I just keep finding out more and more about Mark Carney that I just don't like. I've said it before and again for my Canadian friends that watch my channel. Canada is my second most watched country, and I tell them all the time, you know, Carney, he's giving Hillary Clinton. You know, he's giving Joe Biden. It is concerning to me. It really is concerning to me. Is Trump a good president, sir? That is very subjective. That is extremely subjective on who you ask. Because I have served my country in the military, I'm not the type of person that talks bad about my commander-in-chief, whether I agree with him or not. But I will say it's very subjective. Some people, they absolutely love President Trump and what he's doing. I will tell you his favorability rate is pretty high, as the Republicans, conservatives are right now. President Trump, I think he's at 49%. He was at 51%, so he's dropped a little bit. But that's to be expected because people don't understand tariffs and pricing and things like that, and people are impatient. So I would say it's extremely subjective, my friend. Some people love everything that our president is doing. Some people are like, oh my God, I'm going to move to Ireland like Rosie O'Donnell did. So it's very subjective. All right, guys, so let's see what Pierre's talking about here with Mark Carney and his financial ties with China.
Let's quote from that Globe and Mail article. I'm going to quote here. CSIS also did not have evidence that Mr. Poilievre or members of his inner circle were aware of these alleged actions. Then I'm going to quote the Hope Commission, and I quote, the commission heard testimony about allegations of the government India interference in the Conservative Party leadership race. CSIS witnesses noted that they had no reason to believe the impacted candidates would have been aware of the alleged support. Let's be honest. I won the leadership fair and square. Even my political competitors, like Mr. Patrick Brown, have publicly testified under oath that that was the case. But I'm glad that the Liberals put this attack out today. Really glad. Because there's something that's really been worrying me. After Justin Trudeau named Mark Carney his economic advisor, giving him massive power over public policy in Canada, Mr. Carney went over for meetings in Beijing, where he just had secret talks with the deputy governor of the Chinese central bank. 2 weeks later, Brookfield got a $250 million loan. What did they talk about? What did Mr. Carney, in his role as Trudeau's economic advisor, offer China?
So Mark Carney, Trudeau appoints Mark Carney as his economic advisor. Mark Carney, 2 weeks later, he said, Mark Carney goes over to Beijing. He has talks. He has private talks, and then, then 2 weeks later, after those talks, Canada gets a $2 billion loan, $1.6 billion loan. What did he offer China? That's what Pierre's asking. I'm telling you, he's suspect.
Why would he be having secret meetings with top government-controlled bankers about getting a $250 million loan while he was supposed to be acting in Canada's interest as the Prime Minister's economic advisor? Why would he be collaborating with a hostile foreign regime that we have since learned executed 4 Canadians and took numerous Canadians hostage for a lengthy period of time? And given that Mr. Carney knows that he still owns massive financial interests in Brookfield, which owes a $250 million to a Chinese state-controlled bank, how do we know he's not going to act against our interests in favor of his financial interests? Why didn't he stand in front of this microphone and confess to Canadians that he owes the Chinese government that kind of money? Is this why he's covering up his financial interests? And given that China has murdered our people, taken our people hostage, how is he ever going to stand up to foreign interference when he's so financially compromised? We have never in our history had a weak, out-of-touch leader so terribly compromised and conflicted, whose interests go against our national interests. And I call on Mr. Carney right now to come before a microphone today and explain if this loan is still in place and if he still has those Brookfield assets that he had up until a few weeks ago. Because we cannot trust someone. Could you imagine what you're supposed to be advising Canada's Prime Minister on the well-being of our economy, going to a foreign regime that had executed Canadian citizens, taken Canadians hostage, that it had already been public that they had interfered in multiple elections. They've done incursions into our northern waters. Mark Carney will never be able to protect our national interests because he has massive financial conflicts of interest overseas. What we need now is not to give the Liberals a fourth term with a weak and compromised leader. What we need is a Prime Minister who will put Canada first for a change.
All right. I mean, based on Pierre's making a lot of good points based on the stuff that he's bringing up. And he's making Mark Carney look very, very suspect. And he has been for some time, but he's not the only one. He's not the only one who's been making him look suspect. And that's why I've been following this news for my Canadian friends because, hey, I'm interested in this, you know. And when I go visit Canada, I want to have a good time. I don't want it to be in ruins, you know. The 51st state, I mean, it's not a horrible idea, but I've said this on the channel before. If I was a whole entire country and someone came to me and said, hey, you want to be like a piece of lint in my pocket, I would feel disrespected. Like, that's Canada's a whole country, you know what I mean? And our president's just like, hey, you want to be the 51st state? Like, it's just, it's kind of disrespectful. So I can understand why they would feel like that. But nonetheless, they've had Trudeau in place for about 10 years. And the economy is doing horrible. Very, very similar to what was going on here in America. I already said the level of congruence is scary of what I'm seeing. And at this point, I've said that the Canadians seem that they are leaning more conservative in the sense where there's a desire there. They have a desire for the country to lean more right. You know, it's kind of like, hey, we've been leaning far left for almost a decade now. And now we feel like it's too left. So let's reel it back in and go a little bit right. That's what I feel like I'm getting from Canada as I've been watching and following this. There are some people that like Mark Carney, but there are so many more people that have said he is not the guy to run Canada. And these are people that are just going off of how he ran the Bank of England. That is like scary to me. That they're like, dude, this guy can't run the bank because of the way he ran the Bank of England. He basically ruined the British economy. And I mean, you have the former Prime Minister of Britain saying that, listen, this guy, he basically ruined our economy. Like, he took us down a path, this net zero path that basically ruined the economy. And the guy from the Toronto Sun asked the former Prime Minister if you could give Canada any advice right now based on these two candidates, what would it be? And she said, listen, I'm hoping for a Pierre Poilievre win. She said, but if you want to see your economy survive, like, do not elect like Mark Carney. Like, he's not the guy to run it. So now we're going to go to a more long-standing platform of Canadian news. Shout out to, is this, Portuguese Pie. Shout out to you, Portuguese Pie. He has Carney's offshore Caribbean haven exposed. Proves Pierre right on concerns with security details. So some of the security details and security concerns that Pierre has regarding Mark Carney's finances, it seems to be very true. He's called him out a couple of times publicly and said, hey, I'm calling on Mark Carney to talk about his financial ties with China. I'm calling on Mark Carney to talk about his relationship with Brookfield. I'm calling on Mark Carney to tell the Canadian people what's going to happen if a conflict of interest takes place while he's Prime Minister. What is he going to do in the event that something like that is going to happen or will happen? And yeah, you know, with the way that Pierre calls him out, Mark doesn't always step up right away. I'm not going to lie. I know that Pierre pulls his card, and sometimes he's probably scrambling on what to do or say. But he's done it a couple times. So I want to look at this exposure because he covered a lot of good clips here that confirms this level of exposure financially that we're seeing with Mark Carney. So let's take a listen.
I'm Mr. Singh, Marina von Stackelberg from CBC Television. You and Pierre Poilievre were both in Hamilton last night. He held a rally that had thousands of people. You had a campaign office opening that had a few dozen. What does this say about the support for the New Democrats right now, especially in an area where the NDP has traditionally counted on support?
Folks, it is only day 4 of these election campaigns, and things are starting to get pretty interesting as we have the CBC prying into Mark Carney's affairs, as well as the CBC trying to defend what Mark Carney's affairs are. And if you're unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, take a listen to this question posed by them.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Tom Parry with CBC. Could you just follow up on that? Could you explain in the case of those Brookfield funds, like what was the argument for registering the funds in Bermuda? Is it ethical to do that? And is it something as Prime Minister that you have to crack down? And I'm not sure if it's a problem, but is that something that you have to crack down?
I think the important thing, Tom, is that the flow through of the funds go to Canadian entities who then pay the taxes appropriately, as opposed to taxes being paid multiple times before they get there. So that's how we have this structure. That's a structure that all of our pension funds, par exemple, the Caisse de dépôt, or Ontario teachers, or OMERS, municipal employees, or all the big pension funds in Canada, which are very successful, which protect union workers in many cases, speaking of union workers today, and supply to them. It's those entities and their employees who are covered. So the structures work for that effect.
What's the advantage, though, of putting it into a place like...
It ensures that it's an efficiency of a structure, so that ensures that the flow through goes to the entities that are resident in the countries.
But is it avoiding tax in any way?
It doesn't avoid tax because the tax is paid for example, the examples all I gave, the taxes are paid in Canada, yes. Okay.
Sister Milan has something to tell you.
So I want to see how I don't know if I like that explanation, guys. Let's see.
Hey there, Mark Carney did.
He doesn't want to answer it, so I want to see something.
Or to go to...
ethical to do that. And is it something as Prime Minister that you have to crack down? And I'm not sure if it's a problem. Argument for registering the funds in Bermuda. Is it ethical to do that? And is it something as Prime Minister that you have to crack down? And I'm not sure if it's a problem, but is that something that you have to crack down on?
I think the important thing, Tom, is that the flow through of the funds go to Canadian entities who then pay the taxes appropriately, as opposed to taxes being paid multiple times before they get there. So that's how we have this structure. That's a structure that all of our pension funds, par exemple, the Caisse de dépôt.
So I guess that's his argument. He's asking what's the argument for the funds being registered in Bermuda. And Mark Carney's alluding to the fact that if they're registered in a certain way, basically they're not double taxed. Like he's saying that the way that it works out, there's only a tax that's one time instead of a tax that could take place twice.
Or Ontario teachers, or OMERS, municipal employees,
and that this tax is not just, he's alluding to the fact that it's not just for wealthy or rich people, that it counts for like teachers and lots of different other workers.
All the big pension funds in Canada, which are very successful, which protect union workers in many cases, speaking of union workers today, and supply to them. It's those entities and their employees who are covered. So the structures work for that effect.
What's the advantage, though, of putting it into a place like...
It ensures that it's an efficiency of a structure, so that ensures that the flow through goes to the entities that are resident in the countries.
But is it avoiding tax in any way?
It doesn't avoid tax because the tax is paid for example, the examples all I gave, the taxes are paid in Canada, yes. Okay.
Now it's pretty clear that Mark Carney didn't really want to talk about Bermuda or explain anything about how that makes any sense. But let's listen to Janice McGregor try to defend it and explain it to us simpletons.
Brookfield stuff first, though. As you mentioned, our colleague Danielle LeBlanc out this morning with a story about the way Brookfield Asset Management used tax havens for a number of its clean green tech investment funds. We are all in this campaign going through a bit of an education in terms of global asset management and how this works. But essentially, the nature of the story is to highlight that sort of, as the chairman of the board of this global asset manager, some of the sort of funds that sort of he ultimately was overseeing were making use of things like Caribbean kind of tax havens to shelter their investments, let them grow tax-free. Mark Carney, though, when taking questions about this today, sort of walked us through kind of how this works and why Canadians should sort of think about this in a more nuanced way. Because he pointed out that people who manage the investments are in kind of the asset management game, including the assets of very ordinary working class folks, like the teachers' pension plan in Ontario, for example, Quebec's Hegseth depot. These are people who manage kind of the pension money of a lot of Canadians, kind of very ordinary Canadians, not all rich and wealthy people. But they put some of these sort of holdings in tax havens. Why? Mark Carney explained today. It's because they don't want it to be taxed twice. Eventually, this is income that will be taxed in Canada. But if it was being taxed in terms of sort of the company that was managing the asset as it went along, Mark Carney explained, that would be a form of double taxation. And indeed, we've been kind of reading up to understand better the relationships between different big asset managers out there. And indeed, you do see kind of collaborations, joint ventures between Brookfield that he was ahead of and the Hegseth depot and the teachers' pension plan and other kind of big players in the asset management game. And he's not wrong when he says that the strategy here is to shelter it while it's growing in the funds so that it is taxed when sort of the individual people pull it out as a form of their retirement savings. And the idea that this is only something a haven for the wealthy or for a wealthy corporation is actually misunderstanding what's really going on here in a sense. Because there's a lot of like ordinary folks' pensions kind of involved in this kind of bigger investment world. So Mark Carney tried to sort of walk people through that in terms of understanding how Brookfield would be proceeding in terms of competing for that investment business as a private sector entity.
So Janice tries to make the argument that it's not just for the wealthy, it's also for the ordinary people, like teachers' pensions and other workers. But my question would be, well, why are teachers' pensions and all that being invested overseas in these tax havens? Well, one answer is because the government likes to tax you, especially with the capital gains tax, the yin-yang, so you lose a lot of money, and instead of losing that, you send it to these tax havens. But also the Canadian pension plan investment started being invested overseas, like in Asia, more specifically China, because of Mark Carney's new advisor, Mark Wiseman, who's a gentleman of the Century Initiative. He also worked at BlackRock. He originally started with the Canadian pension plan investment. And here's a video from 12 years ago of him talking about how important it is to invest in Asia.
Well, the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board is investing in Asia, quite frankly, because we have to diversify our assets around the world. Today, we have $166 billion in assets, and it's important that those assets get invested around the world, and in particular with Asia and China in particular, now the second largest economy in the world, soon to be the largest economy in the world. We have to go where the investment opportunities are, and those opportunities are increasingly in Asia. And one thing that people may not be aware of, it, our first office outside of Canada was in Asia. Our first office, which we opened almost 5 years ago now, was in Hong Kong, and it was very deliberate that we did that. We did that in order to build up our own expertise and capabilities on the ground. Well, I think Asia is critical to Canada's economic future. As we know, Asia is the fastest growing region in the world. China itself will, in the next 20 years or thereabouts, become the largest economy in the world. It's already the second largest economy in the world. So Canada has to pay attention to Asia for that reason alone.
Now, in yesterday's press conference, Mark tried to spin a different story by saying, China is important to us, but not that important. We can do some things with them, but not a whole lot. But then reiterated what Mark just said, how they are our second biggest clients.
With the Planet Fitness Black Card, you don't just get a great workout, you get a great perk out, because your membership is packed with perks.
He's suggesting you're beholden to China. Are you beholden to China? Absolutely not. First thing. Second thing I'll say, look, Mr. Poilievre doesn't understand the world. Doesn't understand how the world works. China really happens to be our second largest trading partner. It's our second largest trading partner.
The Chinese ambassador has given, I think, 3 or 4 interviews in the last 2 weeks talking about his interest in reopening free trade talks.
Why are they editing this news? Did you guys catch that? They definitely did it. That's definitely an edit. Like, I edit videos so I can tell
Absolutely not. First thing. Second thing I'll say, look, Mr. Polyev doesn't understand the world, doesn't understand how the world works. China happens to be our second largest trading partner. It's our second largest trading partner.
The Chinese ambassador's given, I think, 3 or 4 interviews in the last few weeks talking about his interest in reopening free trade talks. My question for you is, as we try to diversify away from the United States and reduce our reliance on our trade with the United States, is it your belief that we should be increasing our trade with China?
Look,
and reopening free trade talks.
Here's my view on this broader set of issues. We need to diversify our trade as a country. We're over-reliant on, as wonderful as the trade going across that bridge, we're over-reliant on the United States. I think it's a lesson we've all learned. We need to diversify. We want to diversify with like-minded partners. There are partners in Asia that we can build deeper ties. There is certain activity that the partners in Asia that share our values don't include China. There's certain activity that we could have with China. We obviously do have a large amount of trade with them, but we have to be very careful, very deliberate, and they need to meet Canadian standards.
Now, probably not so surprising to most of you, this isn't the first time that the Liberals have been caught with this whole tax haven situation, because when Trudeau originally got into power, his very first finance guy got caught and the CBC reported on that. I also covered this story probably maybe a month ago, but here's a little refresher on what the CBC found in terms of these tax havens.
Stephen Brockman became the Liberal Party's revenue chair in 2013.
Yeah, I'm the finance guy.
A longtime friend of Justin Trudeau, for years he worked for and then headed the Brockman family's investment firm, Claridge. And it's Claridge that in 1991 set up the offshore trust in question in the Cayman Islands.
So very interesting that Trudeau's original finance guy gets caught moving all this money in the Cayman Islands, and then Trudeau's final financial advisor, who now is the next prime minister, has also been kind of dealing with this same situation. He says it's normal practice to do this, but take a listen to what Pierre Poilievre said when he was asked about this.
Now he claims that somehow this money gets funneled through a Bermuda tax haven only to come back to Canada. Well, why wouldn't he just leave it in Canada in the first place? If it were going to be taxed in Canada, he wouldn't need to funnel it through Bermuda. I don't know, how many of you funnel your investments through Bermuda before you bring them back to pay taxes? I think the answer is 0. The answer to the other question was whether I have investments in tax havens. The answer is no. After President Trump began threatening our economy, I sold my investments in foreign economies and now invest in Canadian stocks and Canadian companies. I brought my money home to this country.
Now, I find it interesting that Pierre is just flat out saying, I had foreign investments, I sold them all, now I have only Canadian investments in stock. Yet Mark Carney still can't tell us what assets he has in his blind trust.
Yep.
He'll go on and on about how he's put him in a blind trust and that he did it very early, but doesn't seem to remember what assets they actually are, which is very surprising. Now, something that happened the day before was an article was released by the Globe and Mail about interference in Pierre's leadership race by India.
This was the Globe and Mail headline this morning.
So this says, CSIS alleges India organized support for Poilievre's 2022 conservative leadership bid. CSIS alleges India organized support for Poilievre's 2022 conservative leadership bid. Agents of India and their proxies allegedly meddled in the 2022 election of Pierre Poilievre as Conservative Party leader as part of a larger effort to cozy up to politicians and parties, according to a source with top secret clearance.
CSIS alleges India organized support for Poilievre's 2022 conservative leadership bid.
And it's CSIS, but they're pronouncing it CSIS.
The Globe cited an unnamed source with top secret clearance saying
it says Indian agents were involved in raising money and organizing within the South Asian community. Oh man.
CSIS learned that Indian agents were involved in raising money and organizing within the South Asian community, and that CSIS did not share this information with Mr. Poilievre because
CSIS did not share this information with Mr. Poilievre because the source said because CSIS did not share this information with Polyev, the source said because he does not have the necessary security clearance. Oh, come on.
He does not have the necessary security clearance.
Most of us have already heard about this because this story broke last year. And when this happened, Pierre was pretty adamant about him not wanting to get a security clearance because he would be muzzled, he wouldn't be able to say anything about this foreign interference if there was some. And he had people like Tom Mulcair coming out back, I think, in July, defending him, saying, I totally agree with Pierre, he shouldn't get it, it was the right decision. Well, yesterday, Tom reiterated this and doubled down on it, and also said Stephen Harper went out of his way when he was prime minister and Tom Mulcair was the opposition, and he gave this kind of information to Tom even when Tom didn't have his clearance. Take a listen.
I made the same comments to your colleague Todd this afternoon on CTV News Channel. I agree completely with Pierre Poilievre on this. I believe he's completely right. You do not accept to play this mugs game where you restrain your ambit and your ability to act as leader of the official opposition, which is a constitutional role to hold the government to account. And this game where you have people in the hierarchy of the security establishment saying, oh, he really should come in, but then he's not allowed to talk about it anymore. Really? Didn't we just have a commission of inquiry headed up by Madame Justice Ho, who put all of this stuff away and said there might have been a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but all of a sudden we're talking about whether Poilievre actually got the 68%. What, maybe it was 67%? And this is madness, to try to make this an issue in a campaign that is so serious for the country, to try to go back to this stuff and to try to complain about Poilievre wanting to do his constitutional duty. He wants to do his job of holding the government to account, and no, he's not going to walk into that bear trap that consists of getting the security clearance, seeing documents that could be important, and not talking about it. By the way, when I was leader of the opposition, Bashi, a certain Stephen Harper would call me personally, his staff would give me a setup, called me once during a wedding reception and said, I've got to talk to you. And it was Harper himself saying, look, there's this and this and this that's going to roll out in the next few days. It's going to be in the news. I want you to know about it. That's what a prime minister does with his or her leader of the opposition. You talk. Nobody had to make me swear any oath. I was still the leader of the opposition, but I had no intention of going in front of a camera and talking about it.
So it's now clear that Justin Trudeau could have told him at any point. Mark Carney has the ability to let Pierre know. Yet these guys would rather use this as a political wedge to paint Pierre as some sort of danger, foreign interference, whatever the case may be. But as Kate Harrison pointed out, how is Pierre Poilievre not able to get any of this information, yet the Globe and Mail has this top secret clearance that they're able to get the information?
Yeah, I think election interference is a problem. It's a problem that I think spans party affiliation. I don't know that we've necessarily learned more today than what was previously known in a general sense. And I don't think, David, it does change the rationale from Poilievre to not receive that briefing. I go back to what exists within the CSIS Act to provide a briefing to political leaders under threat reduction measures. That remains an option for CSIS to use today to brief Pierre Poilievre on potential.
You wouldn't accept it though when it was offered last fall, right? Because he said it would have limited his ability to speak.
My understanding is that it's an open offer to have a briefing under the threat reduction measure context. Rather than it create intrigue in the Globe and Mail headlines, I'm struggling a little bit with how this is both so secret and secure information and intelligence that it can't be provided to the leader of the opposition under the threat reduction measure, but it absolutely can be shared with the Globe and Mail and with readers of the paper. So this is either a serious enough measure.
She makes a good point there.
Learned more today than what was previously known in a general sense, and I don't think, David, it does change the rationale from Poilievre to not receive that briefing. I go back to what exists within the CSIS Act to provide a briefing to political leaders under threat reduction measures.
Under threat reduction measures, that would make sense. So I don't understand how he wouldn't be being able to be made privy to that information either. And they're saying because of a security clearance, but I'm like, if he's the party leader, it's still something that he should know. So I just think that that's interesting.
that remains an option for CSIS to use today to brief Pierre Poilievre on potential.
He wouldn't accept it though when it was offered last fall, right? Because he said it would have limited his ability to speak.
My
right?
understanding is that it's an open offer to have a briefing under the threat reduction measure context. Rather than it create intrigue in the Globe and Mail headlines, I'm struggling a little bit with how this is both so secret and secure information and intelligence that it can't be provided to the leader of the opposition under the threat reduction measure, but it absolutely can be shared with the Globe and Mail and with readers of the paper. So this is either a serious enough measure that it requires that briefing to occur under the TRM. The Prime Minister can also provide that briefing to the leader, should he so choose. Neither of those things have happened, but it somehow is appearing on the front page of the Globe.
Now, the Globe and Mail emphasizes in their article release that they can't tell you who the source is because it is confidential information, yet they can't give this information to Pierre Poilievre, who is the leader of the opposition, and it's about him and potential foreign interference. Doesn't make any sense. But their counter argument is that this wouldn't muzzle him. He would still be able to say certain things. However, when Carney was asked about Chandra Arya yesterday and his security clearance and how he was tied to some foreign interference, listen to what Mark Carney said.
Mr. Carney, I'm Judy Trim with CTV News. We have confirmed that Chandra Arya was disqualified because of foreign interference, specifically related to his meeting with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Given the fact that you have security clearance, can you tell Canadians why that is a concern? And the Liberals have yet to put up a full roster of candidates in all 343 ridings. What is the possibility that foreign interference is impacting that selection of candidates, either from India, China, Russia, Iran?
Let me go. I'm going to deal quickly with the first part of your question, if I may, which is that one of the things, and I've had security clearance for almost 2 decades in various forms and various times. One of the things about having security clearance is you don't then take information that you have from security clearance and repeat it to others.
So there you have it, folks. Mark Carney just admitted that if Pierre got this information, he could not go about telling other people. Now, clearly, the CSIS individuals who told the Globe and Mail don't follow this practice for some odd reason, but Mark Carney just admitted he has a security clearance. He knows the information most likely about this whole situation with Chandra Arya, yet he says, oh, well, if you have security clearance, you don't go and you tell people what you know. That's exactly what Pierre doesn't want to be held against. He wants to be able to express, this person is corrupt, this person is doing this person is doing that. But if he had the clearance, he wouldn't be able to do it. But with all that being said, this was the end of day 4. We are moving into day 5. As I mentioned, things are heating up. And I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think about all these situations that are popping up? What do you think about Carney and this whole Bermuda situation? Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so we're definitely gonna subscribe to Portuguese Pie and keep up because he's going at it day by day. Very similar to the Simple Investor, so Toronto Sun. I watch these guys because they help me keep up with my Canadian news, and I appreciate that, so I can stay up on the up and up for my Canadian friends. So guys, with that being said, we are at the last clip of the live. Every single time we end the live stream here on Cozy Corner TV, we end it with a Christian clip. Today we are ending with a clip from Cliff Buell. He's a YouTube content creator. Cliff has over 600,000 subscribers on his channel, almost 700,000. So when you get a chance, please go check him out. And if you don't know much about Jesus or don't know much about the character Jesus or the person of Jesus, I think his channel is great to start. And his YouTube shorts, they're quick, they're easy, they're straight to the point. It can give you some understanding. He also does podcast formats as well. So go check out Cliff's channel if you get a chance. Today we are reading Christians Must Listen to This. This is a young man who is going to talk about how we as Christians allow the devil to come into our lives and distract us, take things from us, bad things happen because we do not cover our ear gate and our eye gate, meaning that we're not careful with what we listen to and what we watch. So let's take a look at what this gentleman has to say. I thought it was very profound for him to be young. I can tell he's a young guy. So I thought that he had some great information on this topic. So let's take a listen.
I think every single Christian needs to hear this.
So this dude left his front door wide open. Because of that, two robbers armed with guns ran in his house. They took his cell phone, they took his car keys, and they dipped out. Now why am I telling you this? It's because this man did not leave his front door open with the intention of being robbed. But because of his negligence, because he didn't go to the proper steps to ensure that his house was secure, he ended up getting his stuff stolen. The Bible says the enemy comes to steal, kill, destroy. And so what we have is a lot of people who have their doors wide open. They listen to whatever, they watch whatever, they say whatever, they engage in any kind of activity. And because of that, you're allowing the enemy to have access into your life. Your intention is not, I'm going to be depressed. Your intention is not, I'm going to have anxiety. Your intention is not, oh, I'm going to be full of carelessness and I'm going to know. But because of your negligence, you're not watching your eye gates, you're not watching your ear gates, you're not watching what you allow in your life, allow in your home. The enemy has free access to your life. That's why things keep going bad. That's why your joy got stolen. That's why your desire to live got stolen. That's why you don't want to be sober no more. You're in a spiritual war. The devil does not play fair. But thanks be to God who came to set us free, to destroy those demonic powers and set us free in Jesus' name.
Share this video.
I think that's a great point. When he says it's not your intention to be anxious, it's not your intention to be depressed, it's not. I'm not going to get too deep in this because that's not right now, that's not where the Lord has led me to be on this platform. But a lot of Christians, some of them at least, are aware that we are in a spiritual fight, meaning that there are things that happen that we cannot see with the natural eye, right? We have an enemy that you just don't see walking down the street. And if we are not careful with the things that we digest, right? The things that we intake. That's why sometimes when I'm getting ready to start the live stream, I say, I hope you're grounded. I hope you are, regulated. Because why? Because you're about to take in news. And news is not always the greatest thing to hear, right? It's subjective to what's going on in the world. So a lot of the times we're not listening to the greatest news. So it's important for us to be grounded, to be regulated, right? To be calm. And if you're not any of those things, I usually say don't watch the live stream right now. Come back and watch it later, or click off, because it matters what you listen to. From video games to TV shows to music. And I can tell you for a long time I was blind to this. But at some point a couple of years ago, I remember driving in my car I was probably listening to some type of rap or hip hop. And I remember my mood changing to where I started to feel upset. And I started to become curious about that. And I was wondering, why did I get upset? I couldn't remember what I did wrong or if I did anything. I just knew I was in my car and I was listening to music, and it just kind of dawned on me. At this point, pretty new to therapy when I started it, and I remember talking to my therapist about this and just saying, wow, the music actually changed my mood. It changed the way I was feeling. It changed my thought process. And this is something that's very common. So with Christians, we usually talk about this. Be careful what you read. Be careful what you're watching. Be careful the kind of music you're listening to. I remember when Jackie Hill Perry was on Tim Ross's podcast, and they kind of did this music challenge to where for 30 days you didn't really listen to any hip hop. I mean, I think Jackie's thing was Beyonce, so her challenge was for people to not listen to Beyonce. But just any type of music that just wasn't good for you. It maybe changed your mood, or, it maybe came with some type of, dare I say, demonic influence. And I remember going on that challenge. I think it was actually only 21 days. And ever since that challenge, I haven't listened to any other type of music. I usually listen to music that keeps me fairly calm. I'm much more of an oldies but goodies type of person anyway. But I have other music that I like, whether it's oldies, soft rock, blues, jazz, reggae, whatever. But I have certain music that I don't listen to at all because it's just not good for my mood. It's not good for my head or my thoughts. There's certain things that I don't watch on TV at all because it's not good for my head or my mood or my thoughts. So as Christians, we have to be conscious of this, because this is how the enemy gets into us. It gets into our lives, and then now all of a sudden we're dealing with anxiety, depression. We don't know why we feel like we don't want to do anything. We don't know why we're mad. We want to go get, some of us want to go get a gun, and and it's craziness. So you have to be careful about the things that you take in, and whether you're a Christian or not, it really is just a good practice. And honestly, just going through therapy with my therapist, I've learned that even if it wasn't me being a Christian, this would probably still be something that's a practice in my life, because I've just learned to impact that music and what we watch and what we see has on us. So with that being said, guys, I had fun chilling on the corner with you guys today. It's always fun when you guys come, stop by, hang out on the corner with me on our daily live streams. Tomorrow is March 28th on a Friday, so we will be back for our live stream, guys. Same time tomorrow. I think tomorrow I might be on a little bit early. I think my time is around 1600 tomorrow. So you guys look out for me for that time. Today we got on about 1630, 1635. So you guys look out for me around that time. So until next time, which is tomorrow, you guys be safe. What do I always say? Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Be peaceful. Love yourselves. Love one another. Peace.